Hey everyone, I'm Catherine Greenberg and I'm so excited to be back. And today we're gonna talk about how to let that shit go. Let's get into it. I feel like so many people tell me to let it go. Well, this happened. Oh, just let it go, let it go, let it go. And that would be great if I knew how. So here's my take on letting it go. And I've decided to call it Let It Be, because sometimes the language gets all up in my head and I feel like letting it be feels like it's walking alongside me. All right, so when we try to let it go, what happens is we may find ourselves stuck between our past and our future. And we sort of end up in this limbo-ish, purgatory-esque sort of place, and it's really no place to set up your tent. So what happens is we suffer. And as humans, we tend to feel like we need to suffer a lot before we relinquish it. And the suffering is optional. There's always going to be pain in our lives, but we get to choose how much and how long we suffer. And we suffer mostly due to attachment. We attach to past pain, we attach to anger, we attach to resentment, we attach to how something should be, or how something shouldn't be, or how we want it to be, or how we think it's going to be. And what happens is all of this attachment holds us back. And when you hold on to what you don't want, it blocks what you do want from coming in. It blocks that flow of love and abundance, because what you put out is what comes back. And so while letting go or letting it be is absolutely essential to a more peaceful, mindful existence, it's so hard to go from theory to practice. So I'm so glad you asked. Why is it so hard? Let me tell you. When your brain is in constant fight or flight mode, or freeze or fawn, and it's cycling back and forth, conflict wreaks havoc on our brains. And it's often because we feel as though we need to control something. And the fact is, we're really not in charge of the outcomes. And this exhausts our nervous system. And we are desperate for something to end. Does that sound familiar? And so when you're in this state, your brain, it's exhausted, it's fatigued, it feels like it's done. And what happens is it feeds that need that feels really urgent to create certainty. And it usually happens in one of three ways. One, we jump into decisions really, really quickly without really thinking through the consequences because we feel that need to lock something in. We want to know, how is it going to be? What is going to happen? What am I going to do? How is this going to work out? Or we feel completely paralyzed and do nothing at all. And I know how this feels, and it's such an incredibly hard feeling. You want to do the thing, and you can't do the thing, and you really need to do the thing, and you must do the thing, and your brain is like, no, 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 I'm stuck, I can't move, I can't do it, you can't do it. And around you go, and it's this internal fighting. We rush to assumptions because when we have a gap in our knowledge, we look for ways to fill it. And so we assume. And we make assumptions about ourselves or other people or situations or events. And what happens is none of those responses really leave us feeling any more certain. I'm pretty sure it's actually the opposite. And so when we are able to detach from the outcomes and we focus on the intention of our action rather than the outcome, that provides what we need to learn how to let things be exactly as they are. If it's not meant for you, it won't come to you. And if it's not meant for you, it won't stay with you. All right. Everything is energy. Some people might say I'm a lot of that. And that's okay, I'm not for everybody. But everything in the world is energy. Our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions and everything sort of gives out a vibration. And what you send out is what you receive back. If I knew anything about quantum physics, I would be pretty sure that that would agree with me, but I know very little. So I'm just gonna go with my gut. And that's how I do my best to live. And I find that it works really, really effectively. So whatever you give your attention to, whether it's wanted or unwanted, that's going to grow. What you feed will grow. You nurture it, you water it, you feed it, it's gonna bloom. And so if you're focusing on joy and peace and love and satisfaction and contentment, you're gonna experience more of that. When you look at what you do have rather than what you don't, life becomes an infinite blessing. And that's not to say it's easy. It's absolutely not. But all of your growth, it's gonna be on the other side of that discomfort. And when we focus on pain and regret and sadness and hurt and anger, the same thing happens. So there's a balance. But when you're going around trying to rid yourself of an emotion or state of being that you don't want, like, I don't know, maybe you struggle with a lot of anxiety and stress, and you're like, I gotta get rid of this stress, stop being so stressed out. Pretty good chance that you're gonna find yourself more stressed or more anxious. So when you've made the decision that you shouldn't stress, well, you're gonna find that you're more stressed. Stop worrying, stop worrying. Oh, well, when you tell your brain to stop worrying, you're gonna increase your worrying. Your brain cannot process negatives. It doesn't understand them. So if you are a professional skier and you're up at the top of that slope, and I know I've mentioned this before, but it's so important. The reason professional skiers don't ski into trees all the time is because they're not at the top of the hill saying, hey man, don't hit those trees, don't hit those trees. What they are saying is focus on the slope, focus on the trail ahead of you. And that's how your brain works. If you tell yourself not to do something, it's kind of like a snarky adolescent. It's going to want to do it even more. The question becomes, will this be a good thing to have done? Will this be effective? Will this add value to my life? Here's one of my favorite quotes by Mother Teresa. She said, I was once asked why I don't participate in anti-war demonstrations. I said, I will never do that, but as soon as you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. Well, let's think about what happens here. When you're thinking about an anti-war march, what's the focus of that? Well, think about what does that bring to mind? It might bring feelings of frustration, of anger. It might bring thoughts of war and violence and unrest. You might feel hopeless. You might feel dejected, and that can spiral. But when your language speaks of a pro-peace rally, that's a completely different situation. This same theory applies to letting go. Right? So unless you're able to truly let go, which means really withdrawing your attention completely from it, you're going to be more likely to focus on what feels unwanted or what feels negative or what feels heavy and like a huge burden to carry. And you end up drawing more of that into your life. This is a hard shift to make. Please don't think I am minimizing that. It is very hard, but it's very, very possible. Like any habit we build, it takes practice and commitment. And remember that your mood follows action, not the other way around. Don't sit around and wait for yourself to feel motivated. Do the thing, and then the motivation will come. Here it is. Step 1. Say yes. Say yes to whatever it is. Accept that reality as if you had chosen it. This is what is meant for me. This is what is here in this moment, in this breath. This is what the universe has prepared for me, and I'm going to lean into it and get really curious about it. If you fight it, it will strengthen. we cannot reject or push away what's unwanted. It won't work. You can try it. But until you accept something exactly as it is, you're not going to be able to change it. Without acceptance, there is no change. So you can't focus on whatever the problem is and find the solution in the same space. The solution is not ever going to be where the problem is. And so this is where we have to do our best a little bit every day to shift your focus, right? And the way to begin learning how to shift your focus is accepting what is in this moment, in this breath, and understand that you're doing the best you can with what you have at this moment in time. You are exactly where you're meant to be. You work with what is, not what you wish were. You work with what is, not what you wish were. That's accepting reality with your mind, your body, and your spirit, and working with them as a whole. You are not here to dim your light. You are here to be exactly as you are. And you know what? You might be too much for some people, and that's totally fine. Those are not your freaking people. So, anger? You want to let go of anger? Absolutely. You got to acknowledge it, and you got to accept it first. You have to acknowledge that you may feel shameful about it. You may have grown up in an environment where you were not permitted to feel angry. So you will feel shame about that. You're an adult now with adult judgment and adult perspective, and you get to decide. Don't argue with your thoughts or your emotions. Your emotions are never random. They're always here for a reason. They're always messengers. They're always here to tell you something. They give us a tremendous amount of information. Your thoughts are up to you. Your thoughts come in. What you do with them is entirely up to you. You can have a thought and not act on it. And it's important to recognize the difference between thoughts and emotions. I had a client come up to me and she said, "Oh my gosh, I feel like such a loser." And I said, "That's not a feeling, that's a thought. What's the feeling underneath that?" And we unpacked it together, and the feelings were hopelessness and shame and sadness. Not feeling like a loser. That was a thought. What you resist persists. So give them permission. If you're not ready, I give you permission to feel however you feel, to think however you think, and make a decision based on that. How you feel is completely valid. Your emotions are not wrong. You are not your emotions. They're not good and they're not bad. If you are hurt, you are hurt. Period. It is valid. Period. Agree. Oh my gosh, agree with yourself. Agree with your limiting thoughts and the hurtful thoughts and whatever you feel. That's okay. Are you struggling with forgiveness, which I know we all do at times? Okay, yeah, that's right. I can't forgive this person. I can't forgive this person right now. I don't know if I ever can forgive this person. Okay, I know there's a lot of forgive and forget, and you know what? How you feel is how you feel, and it's freaking okay. Wherever you are in this moment is exactly where you're meant to be. And just because you're sort of faking it to make it, it doesn't mean that what you're saying is necessarily true. And I know this seems backwards, but you can agree and not necessarily believe it. This just works as a tool to sort of manage the negative thoughts and emotions so they don't manage you. When you agree with them, there's a battle that ends, and the battle was between you and them. When there's no argument left, there's no power left. And the best way to fizzle out drama is with neutrality. With humans, with thoughts, you name it, right? You want to get to that place where nothing is worth your inner peace. You want to walk down the street and someone comes up to you and says, "You know what? The sky is actually orange." And you're like, "You are absolutely right." Bless them, release them, and move on with your peaceful, beautiful heart. All right, what happens when we let in instead of letting go? So once you've reached this place of complete acceptance, your mind, your body, your spirit, all of that, well, then you can move on to step 2, which is inviting the new. 2, new. Okay. Sometimes when we let go of things, we find that fear jumps in. And this makes sense. We've lived a certain way for a long time, and our tendency as humans is to go back to what's familiar, back to what we know, back to what in some ways is convenient. But this is definitely not how we grow. I mean, no great changes were made because we stayed comfortable. We don't go uphill by accident. So when we leave something behind and we don't have something to replace it with, well, there's a big old space for the unknown, and that can bring fear. It can be scary because we're making a change. And so when you don't know what's coming next, we tend to cling to what's familiar, right? It's everything I just said. And so when something is known to you or something you've been doing for a long time that may not necessarily provide growth, we still tend to do it. So you have to decide. You have to consciously, fully decide what is next for me. And that's totally up to you. It's absolutely up to you. This is how you let in instead of letting go. So rather than pushing away what you don't want, what feels unwanted, what feels negative, what feels hurtful, try shifting that and invite what you do want to you. Invite curiosity to come walk with you. I notice I'm feeling this. Why? Rather than judging yourself and then judging your judging. I shouldn't be feeling this way anymore. I'm so sick of feeling this way. This always happens to me. Why can't I just let this go? Probably because you're asking yourself that. So if you can see opportunities in what's unknown rather than all the downsides of anxiety and fear and self-doubt and pain, and you shift that to inviting peace and confidence and love and beauty and glory, your brain and your heart will begin to match up. And because I do this a lot, we replay mistakes over and over in our mind. I haven't slept for like 40 years because I'm so sure I said something to someone that I wish I hadn't said, and that they're mad at me, and that they're looking at me funny, and I'm not going to have any friends, and then I'm going to be all of those ruminations that spiral out of control because we're not living in the present. And so we tend to grasp onto these unwanted thoughts and replay them and all the mistakes we've made or the things we've done or the things that have happened to us. And we cling to the past, and we find that it's really hard to move on from it. And what happens is it's like a joy burglar. It just comes in and it's like, I'm going to steal your joy one at a time, one moment, one moment, one moment, rather than filling your basket. So rather than trying harder to let go or let things be, accept where you are. I promise you it's okay. I know it may not feel okay right now, but this isn't permanent because nothing is. This is where you are right now. This is not a life sentence. Even this has an expiration date. This is a season, not a lifetime. Find and respect that difference. Embrace it wholly. Say yes. Say yes to worry. Say yes to shame. Say yes to guilt. Say yes to grief and sadness and longing and all of that. When you confirm them and give them permission, that's when you're able to release them. Everything wants to be acknowledged and accepted. Every human, every experience, every emotion. And until you are able to do that, they will continue to come back. And then you can invite in whatever you desire. You can imagine and you can visualize and you can focus on the wanted. And these are the beginning steps of learning how to let things be. I know folks are struggling right now. I'm struggling right now. Every time I watch the news, I read the news, I try to figure out what can I control and what can't I control? What can I change? What can't I change? And it's hard. If you are struggling, please, please, please reach out. I know one of the hardest things we can do is ask for help, but it is out there. If you're ready, we're ready for you. We need you here. Please stay here. You are loved. There is a magnificent universe waiting for you. And I'm telling you this because I've been there and I know what that feels like, to feel like you can't breathe and you can't move and you're stuck in the muck and everything feels dark and heavy and you feel like you're a burden. I promise you, you are enough. You were born worthy. It is not necessary for you to dim your light in this world. We need you. Remember, make some space for grace. You're so loved.